us at Learn at UOB Asset Management. Today's topic we'll be covering, are you a saver or spender over the Lunar New Year? So before I begin, maybe we will just give another 2 to 3 minutes and allow some of the participants to come join us. So we will just begin shortly in about another minute or two. Hi, good morning, everyone. So once again, welcome to Learn at UOB Asset Management. Today, we will be talking about, are you a saver or spender over the Lunar New Year? So before I begin, I would like to share some information. So today, I'm your host and moderator. My name is Hayden. My experience actually spans across investment advisory and, of course, over the fintech and asset management space. So I'm currently a member of the customer success team for UOB Asset Management Invest. Now, today's agenda, we will be providing a quick introduction to who or what is UOB Asset Management. Of course, today's topic, we will be focusing on the balance between saving, spending, and investing. I will also be taking the opportunity to touch on a little bit about what is the UOB Asset Management Invest app, and after which there'll be a Q&A session for me to answer the questions that you guys have sent in. So before I begin, just some basic housekeeping rules. So we have actually have a chat box that's available. If you have some connectivity issues, do let us know. We also have a Q&A icon for you to post your questions. And after the webinar, we will have some QR codes for you to scan to join us on some of our social media pages. So please take note that this is a public webinar. The session will also be recorded. So as an introduction, UOB Asset Management, we are an Asia-leading asset management fund house. So we are actually wholly owned by UOB Group. We also have 35 years of investment experience over 9 different markets. So currently, we have close to about 32 billion under asset management, over a team of 90 plus investment professionals. So 4 key strategic pillars that we actually focus on is to be digital first, focus on sustainability, embrace our Asian heritage, and also to keep our customers at the center. We are also one of the first regional asset management firms in Singapore to join the PRI. And some accolades in Asia that we have garnered will be over a total of 302 awards regionally. And this consistency is a testament to the performance of our presence in Asia. So to today's topic, the balance between saving, spending, and investing. So I think this is a topic that is very commonly or very frequently talked about. And I think a lot of us know at the back of our head the importance of saving, spending, and also having that balance between that and eventually having some money left for investing. So today I'll be touching on some points that again very frequently talked about, points that you probably have heard of before. But again, today's session serves as a reminder and also see how we can tie this in to a better money management skill set, and also how this can transition into how this can assist you in terms of your investing. So very importantly, money management skills, we do think that it is essential for a healthy money mindset because it is important to prioritize what we need to spend on and then consequently being able to save and to achieve your short-term and long-term financial goals altogether. And eventually, ensuring that while you're working hard, your money is working hard for you too. So today I will be sharing with you what we think are 4 main money management principles. So the first one would be knowing how to save first, and some key differences between your wants and needs and how do we actually segregate them. From there, we will be touching on in terms of how can we better manage your expenses and leading up to how you can prepare a budget for yourself. So a lot of people, of course, we tend to have the tendency to spend first rather than to save first. So when we look at saving or spending, the difference between saving first and spending first, some people that have a save first and spend what's left mentality, when the salary comes in, it naturally will go into the savings account first or go into their dollar cost averaging strategy where they kind of set aside some money for their investments on a monthly basis. So that's what we call a save first mentality. So things such as your investments, your must-pay bills, your lifestyle expenses. But for people that have more of a spend first mentality and maybe save later, what happens here is that they still, yes, they pay for the must-pay bills first and lifestyle expenses first. And after which, whatever is left, then it goes to their investing or savings, or if not, there may be nothing left at all. So it is important to have a safest mentality, and after which, whatever is left, that goes into your discretionary spendings. So to conclude on this aspect, you must ensure that you save a portion of your income every month. A spend first and save later pattern could mean that there is nothing left for your savings. So always remember to portion out a portion of your income to be categorized as savings or investing first. Remaining value, then that goes into your spending expenses, your discretionary spendings. So for the rest of your income, that you can use a budget to manage your expenses, which we'll cover a bit later. So ideally, you should be saving at least about 20% of your income on a monthly basis. So of course, this is something that is quite easy to understand, or actually many of us already know. The difference between your wants and needs. So needs are the essentials of life. So these are things that you can't live without, like your food and utilities. So your wants, of course, are your holidays, nice nights out, a new laptop, entertainment, discretionary spendings. So they could be more expensive, but not necessarily better for your wants. It is important to know what are the needs that you need to pay for, and for the wants, if they can be substituted for something at a lower cost or things are non-essential, these are things to consider whether do I really need this to better manage your budget. So always prioritize spending on your needs over your wants. So think about something that I bought recently, especially for those of us over the Lunar New Year, there must have been a lot of increased spendings. So do think about how much have you spent on it. Was it actually a need or want? Was it an essential item or probably purchased on impulse? These are certain questions that we constantly have to ask ourselves whenever we make these purchases. So if you realize that, especially over holiday seasons, you have exceeded your spending, it is important to take steps to curb these spendings to ensure that it doesn't hinder your long-term financial goals. So we have 5 points to share when it comes to managing your expenses, or rather 5 ideas. If you realize that as you're tracking your monthly expenses, do take an honest look at how money is being spent, because if you're looking to reduce your monthly expenses, here are some ideas. So change to household brands when shopping for food or essential household items. Perhaps a lot of us are guilty of this. We do take a lot of Grab rides, ride-hailing services instead of the public transport. And also don't buy things that you don't need. Transitioning to more home-cooked meals instead of eating out, and of course, reviewing your monthly subscriptions. Point 5 to me, it's ever so important because I think a lot of us these days, we do sign up for a lot of subscriptions that we may or may not use. Things like the Disney channels, your Netflix, that after some time you realize that, oh, I actually only use it from time to time, not too frequently. So these are actually expenses that are eating into your month-to-month monthly expenses. Then you realize that as it breaks up, a lot of these costs start to become higher and higher. So do take a look at these aspects to help you manage your expenses a little bit better. Now, when we come to the third point of our money management principles, a very important element to this is preparing a budget. So some of you may have seen this before. This is a very fundamental budgeting rule where we call this a 50-30-20 rule. So to us, a budget is actually simply a good savings and spending plan. Now, it helps you manage your finances and liabilities prudently, and it is a very good way to get a quick snapshot in terms of where your money is coming from and going out into. Many a times as we spend on credit cards or just on online spendings, we do quickly lose track of how much we have already spent. And at the end of the month, some people actually do get a bill shock. Oh, I actually spent this much already. So having this budgeting rule gives you a very quick, again, snapshot in terms of, okay, how much have I already spent? How many percentage I can still allocate to this? If I am close to exceeding that, I probably need to pause or slow down for the month already. So it tracks your spending so you can put aside money for your long-term and short-term goals, be it savings, be it investing. So the fourth point here is, of course, control your money so that it does not end up controlling you. And if you have an existing budget, remember to review it from time to time to make sure it still works. Because an excellent example would be this year, the Lunar New Year is in January, and the month before was Christmas. So this is a time when people do spend a lot, and your current 50-30-20 rule may not be applicable for certain months like this. So it is important to review it honestly, and if there is a need to tweak the percentages that suits you a bit better, that is perfectly fine. The reason here is because some younger investors or savers, they may not necessarily need 50% of their monthly income to go into their needs if they're still staying with their family. Their cost for the needs can substantially go down. So where do they actually channel these additional percentages? Well, a lot of us actually channel this to the wants portion. So the 20% of wants can potentially go up to 30-40%. But in fact, if you look at this an overview, you realize that, oh, I could actually channel this to my savings or investing portion. Similarly, if your needs percentage is a bit higher, then you can tweak around the percentage for the wants and needs, and a budget that can work for you a bit better and more tailored to what you're looking for. Again, the 50-30-20 rule is more of a one-size-fits-all kind of rule, but it's important for you to tweak it to your own spending styles and saving styles. But importantly, wants, needs, and savings are three categorization to split your monthly income into. So with that, we look at what on a monthly basis, after you have set a monthly budget, we then look at what is called a monthly investable. So a monthly investable is basically a monthly income deducted by your monthly expenses. But before we do that, it is important to build an emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of roughly your monthly expenses. The reason here is because once you have set an emergency fund, that's 3 to 6 months, well, this is also a bit subjective because depending on occupation, if your role is a little bit, the income is not, it always fluctuates, then suggestion here is that to stretch it out a bit further, it can be 6 to 9 months. If it's a more stable income, you are sure that it comes in regularly, 3 to 6 months actually is a good portion to set aside as an emergency fund. Once you have set that aside, whatever savings that comes in on a monthly basis becomes a monthly investable or monthly saving. Because at later this webinar, we will also be sharing why it is not ideal to bring too much cash. You also can look at how we can deploy these funds. So that monthly investable comes from your monthly income deducted by your monthly expenses. So now that we have a budget plan in mind, what next? So while we have our savings and spending sorted out, it is important that we ensure that while you are working hard, your money is also working hard for you too. So it is important that we set some financial goals and objectives to ensure that be it the savings, the spending, the investing is also aligned to your monthly cash flows. I will also be covering a little bit about the time you have in the market is more important than timing it, lump sum investing versus dollar cost averaging. Now, the reason why it is important to look at this is that a lot of investors or savers, they have questions for us such as, I have this much money set aside. When is a good time for me to enter the market? This we will cover shortly. So this chart actually compares the past 20 years of bank fixed deposit rates of 1 year as compared to if you have invested into the S&P 500 index, which is top 500 companies in the US. Difference in cumulative returns across the past 2 decades or so, close to 2 decades. So of course, the key difference here is that if you're holding cash, the principal itself is definitely guaranteed because it's sitting in the bank account. But for investing, it carries investment risk. There will be fluctuations. So you can see here from this table, there are certain years where a 2008 great financial crisis, S&P 500 actually delivered a negative 37% return. Whereas if you held cash, you have been better off in that specific year. You have not suffered losses, but got about 0.7% returns. But progressively, as you look across the years, the investment will have delivered 20 plus, 50 plus positive return. But of course, there will still be fluctuations. There will be years that it was a negative return. But if you look at it critically over here, specifically a 12-year horizon, you will see that you would have gotten 100 plus, close to 150% return across a decade compared to holding cash if you had invested. So the purpose of this is to show the relative comparison between if your money just sits there, or if you have done dollar cost averaging strategy, or you have deployed that funds earlier, what kind of returns you have expected. And it is important because as inflation is going up, and if interest rates are low, it essentially erodes the real value of your cash. But of course, this year, interest rates are a bit higher. But when you look at a 10-year horizon, 12-year horizon, you'll realize that it is quite rare that interest rates are this high, and usually interest rates in the past are much lower. So if you are holding on to cash, you're in that sense, your money is not working as hard as you are for your money. So setting your financial goals and objectives, we can broadly categorize them into short and long-term goals. So short-term goals are, basically goals that you can achieve 1 to 3 years, such as a home renovation, or you might be looking at purchasing a new car. Although now COE prices are quite high, but we do categorize this more of a short-term goal for your financial purchases. Well, your long-term goals are then you're typically more than 7 years away financial objectives. So this could be buying a second property for investment, your children's university education, or even a comfortable retirement in 10, 20, 30 years ahead. And we have 4 key points to share when it comes to planning for a financial goal. So how do we actually get started? It's important that these financial goals are specific. They are measurable, realistic, and are also time-bound. Why they have to be specific is because if you don't know what you're planning for, you don't know how much you need to cater for that specific goal. It makes it very hard to start planning. If you are not too sure what the amount is, certain months, a lot of people would just say, hey, if I have an extra 200, I'll save a 200. If I have an extra 500, I'll go with the 500. Or if not, maybe this month I'm not saving anything. I'm not saving at all. Without a plan in mind, it is very hard to stick to the plan. So this goes back into the save first or spend first mentality. Being specific helps you stick with the save first mentality because you know that there's a specific amount I need to cater. So you will start saving first before spending. Now, point 2, why it has to be measurable. Now, if it's not measurable, again, it is very difficult to keep track of whether you are still on track to achieving that financial goal or you have already deviated from your initial plan. Now, point 3 is also very, very important. The plan has to be realistic. Not too long ago, I had a conversation with a friend where they intend to save 2 million within 5 years. Well, that is a very good goal to have, but you need to look at the monthly income. You need to look at the possibility of that goal being achieved or not. Otherwise, it is very difficult to again stick with that plan, and you will fall off your initial plan very quickly, realizing that, oh, after a few months, I probably cannot hit this goal. So it has to be realistic. So lastly, time bound. This again is very important because then you give yourself a certain runway to achieve this goal. So you know that when I reach a certain age, I roughly have this amount of money, or even better, I have already fulfilled the amount I required to fund for my retirement, fund for my children's education, etc. Here I have broken down into two different goals as an example. So when we take a look at goal setting, we need to first look at, okay, what is my monthly income or monthly cash flow? It could be from rental income, it could be from perpetual income from my previous investments, or a bond that I have, a perpetual bond I have. Whatever that may be, you need to first look at your monthly inflow of cash. Then we look at what is that financial goal that we intend to set. With that goal in mind, we then know how much amount is required, what is the timeline, when will I need this money, and that will help me determine the risk tolerance I can be exposed to. Why I say this is because normally when you have a short to medium term financial objective, it is better to have a lower or a medium to lower risk tolerance, because if you were to have a high risk tolerance for a short-term goal, that will mean that you may potentially go for higher risk investments. Now, relative to a short-term goal, that would not be ideal, because if the markets are fluctuating and in the short term, the market move against, or rather is against whatever you are against you, simply put, is disadvantages. If the markets are down, you do not have enough runway to wait for a recovery. You then will be forced to sell investments. So generally, investors may not be very aware of this, but it's important that if you are looking at a short-term or medium-term goal, not to have a too high risk exposure. Even if you were to go for that high risk exposure, know what you are getting into. So in this case, this example here shows a short-term goal, a medium risk tolerance. Now, with that 40,000 in mind, you can then break it down into, oh, how much savings I have set aside already, how much can I actually start with? So this example, the investor can start with $5,000 first. And because the monthly income is about 4,000, you can set aside about 1,000. So this is aligned to about 20 to 25% of the monthly income into the monthly investable amount. So over a 3-year time horizon, the total contribution will add up to about $36,000. Now, to hit this 40,000 goal, assuming that this process started investing from day one, from the 3-year timeline, and assuming the markets they go for something medium risk and an annualized return of 7% per annum, this will actually generate up to, in totality, the amount to go up to 46,000. So this actually exceeds the amount required by 6,000 simply by doing a dollar cost averaging and investing in the long term. The returns on investment in totality is $5,095 across the 3 years. So this is how you can not only just save, but also allow the time to assist you to generate some returns out of the money that you saved aside. Now, we take a look at the long-term goal here. Similarly, review that monthly income, review what that financial goal is. Now, if the amount required is $1 million in 20 years, because the timeline is longer in the 20-year time horizon, that allows an investor to be able to take on a bit more risk. But of course, the investor, him or herself, needs to assess whether they're comfortable with that fluctuation first. But for one, if the timeline is longer, that allows the investor to have a bit more risk capacity. So if we look at an example, starting amount of 20,000, doing a monthly investing of 2,000, total contribution across 20 years would be 480,000. Now, because the investor has a higher risk tolerance and assumingly has gone for a slightly higher risk form of investment, over a 20-year time horizon, assuming 10% per annum of annualized return across 2 decades, the returns on investment actually goes up to 1.1 million. On top of the contribution the investor has placed in, the value could potentially go up to about 1.6 million, while not only exceeding the amount required, but having an excess as a buffer to even fund for retirement further. Now, the question that we mentioned earlier, lump sum investing versus dollar cost averaging, and this is a question that a lot of investors have at the back of their head. Do I actually hold on to my money if I have a lump sum, especially for those of you that over the Lunar New Year have fortunately collected some red packets, thinking what to do with this savings? When is a good time to invest? Is the market too volatile now? When is the best time? Now, this is a chart comparing between performance of lump sum investing and dollar cost averaging. So the chart above the 0% line shows how many times, or rather when were the times, dollar cost averaging outperform a lump sum investment strategy. Whereas anything below the 0% line shows that a lump sum investing outperforming dollar cost averaging as a strategy. So actually, lump sum investors that started early tend to have a better return compared to dollar cost averaging investors because the money is invested in the early stages. In time, in the long term, the market tend to trend upwards in the long term. So if you're invested very, very early and you're able to hold it out in the long term, that tends to be a bit more beneficial. But of course, for those investors that do not have a lump sum capital to begin with, the low cost averaging is still more ideal. But fortunately, it is not to say that one strategy, you can only use one strategy over the other. In fact, they both ought to be combined for the best strategy for an investor in the long term. Because once you've deployed the lump sum, you are ensuring that whatever excess cash you have on hand is fully utilized. And as you move on to your monthly investable excess income, that's when the dollar cost averaging strategy comes in. So to further actually add on to that point, here is a chart to kind of compare between timing the market versus the time you have in the market. So the green dots here, what you can see here is that the investors investing at certain times in the market, and the red dots is the investors withdrawing it. So as an investor, if you try to go in and out of the market, trying to buy when you think the market is good, or when you sell when you think the market is not too ideal, this is what we profile as an anxious investor, trying to time it. But for a steady investor, if I just put my money in this chart 2001 and I just leave it there as it is, over a 20-year time horizon, you realize that the steady investor actually has far more returns than an investor that goes in and out of the market. Because as much as we want to, we do not have a crystal ball to predict the markets. So this might be a bit hard to time when is exactly the best time or the worst time to exit. In fact, just sitting there, let the time work in your favor, actually is a lot more beneficial as an investor. So when we look at investing, how do we actually ever begin? So I believe a lot of participants today have heard of the UOBAM Invest app. So today I will share a bit more in terms of what is UOBAM Invest. So UOBAM Invest is actually a digital platform that offers solutions to investors, be in a guided and personalized investment, or if you would like to choose specific areas of investment for yourself, the platform or the app allows you to do so as well. So we actually have multiple portfolios that allow investors to build their wealth or set specific goals such as your retirement or your child's education, or even invest in areas that are mega trends. So we actually have 4 main key services that you can actually use on the UOBAM Invest app. So the first one is a core approach where you can explore a guided approach to investing. So you can optimize your portfolio purely based on your investment horizon and risk tolerance. You can also set, as I mentioned earlier, specific goals that you can set the amount you require, when do you actually need these funds by, and risk profile will be actually generated for you based on that goal. So for the satellite approach, we actually have what we call the Fund Direct. So you actually have access to direct unit trust that UOB Asset Management has. And of course, we have a megatrend portfolio that allows you to invest into the megatrend areas, while our portfolio managers will help you decide where these areas are, and you get to partake in this megatrend investing. We also hope to share that our current promotion for the new year is actually an extended promotion to the end of February. So the first 2 or existing UOB AM Invest app users you can actually top up between 23rd January to 28th February, and there's a chance to receive an extra gift reward such as a 45 Apple Watch, and also $20 credit for every $1,000 top up. So do let us know if some questions in the chat box. And we will leave this QR code here for you to scan to join us on LinkedIn or Facebook, or take a look at some of the questions that have come in. All right, so don't see any questions coming in. So I've come to the end of my sharing session. So I hope you guys have been able to refresh some budgeting rules that you guys are already aware of, and also a bit more familiar with how you can direct some of your monthly funds into investing to assist you to make sure that your money works harder for you. So again, thank you for your time today to join me this morning. We'll be having different types of webinars from time to time. So to keep a lookout for some of the EDMs that we do send out. And again, thank you for your attendance today.